You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters. Well, this is interesting. There has been an article that's come out that has peeled back the curtain on how the rest of the NFL has viewed what's now getting called a botched trade between the Ravens and the Raiders for Maxx Crosby. We are finally getting, and I heard somebody talking about this the other day. Would what the Ravens did cause pause? It was Mitch over at the Todd McShay show. His partner that's on that Todd McShay show said, would the rest of the NFL possibly pause with dealing with the Ravens now on trades? Will it give them a reason to take a step back and go, wait a minute? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a damn good point to have brought up. Well, now NFL insider Jason La Canfora has peeled back the curtain a little bit on exactly how NFL executives feel about what the Ravens did. And let's just say they think the Ravens are shady as hell. This is an interview that La Canfora did with casino.org. And check this out. The Ravens used a failed physical allegation to rebuff the deal with Las Vegas that would have sent 2 picks for the disgruntled future Hall of Famer. However, Crosby was coming off of a January knee surgery, and every team that was interested knew the physical would involve projections. Multiple general managers and top execs told me they strongly believe the Ravens, after losing a bevy of core players early in free agency and finding the market for pass rusher Trey Hendrickson softer than expected, simply pivoted to a cheaper alternative and used the medicals as an excuse. This is exactly the bullshit we called out in the first aftermath video of this shit happening. All right? Was it simply Trey Hendrickson is a lesser price to pay and they don't have to give up draft picks, so they pulled a fast one and said, oh, the medicals suck. We're getting out of this shit. Oh, boy. A combination of, quote, cold feet and total bullshit, wow, is how the industry viewed the Ravens' actions. But it hardly came as a surprise to many of them. And those executives believed should not have not shocked the Raiders either. So some people are saying, hey, you entered into this deal with the Ravens, and everybody knows they can be full of shit. They can be shady. Quote, you have to know who you're dealing with. One NFL general manager who was pursuing Crosby as well. Oh, is that Jerry? Is that Jerry? The NFL GM continued, quote, those guys have used the physical to get out of deals before. They have never traded a first-round pick for a player ever, and now they're going to trade 2 for a 29-year-old coming off of surgery. The agents knew there was a chance Baltimore would pull out of this thing. It's not like it's out of character. God, Ravens are getting smoked here. This sentiment was echoed resoundingly, putting the Raiders front office, led by Tom Brady, new to this sort of leadership, and inexperienced general manager John Spytek under scrutiny as well. The Ravens maintained they were operating on the Raiders' timeline about how and when they could thoroughly evaluate Crosby. But the larger reality, according to several execs who have been involved in tricky negotiations with players coming off of injuries prior to the start of the league year, that there were obvious precautions. A more grizzled football operation would have demanded as conditions to a trade of this scale with this much potential for implosion. So it's not a great look either to hear that the Raiders simply got hornswoggled, and anybody with more experience could have seen this coming. But that's still shady as hell by the Ravens. Quote, they were naive about how they handled this, said a contract negotiator for another NFL team. The Ravens have a reputation. You either tell them that they have to do the deal not contingent on a physical, because there's no way he's being cleared for football activities in March, or you give them 48 hours to evaluate the player and make sure you get closure on that before they get cold feet and pivot. A second general manager said, quote, it's easy to say after the fact, and I feel really bad for John because I know he was blindsided. But giving that much time to sit on this thing was a bad idea. 5 days or whatever it was, that's way too long. Well, you know, this thing was, what was it, on a Saturday, I think it was, and the league year didn't start until Wednesday afternoon, if I'm not going crazy. So, and I even thought about that, okay, for a couple of days. I was like, that's a long time that this trade's got to float before it can happen. But there's been plenty. I mean, there's been trades that's been agreed to in Jan. I'm still certain the Alex Smith trade was back in January when the Chiefs sent him to the Redskins, and that trade went through, right? But according to Lock and Four, the Ravens had a reputation, and the Raiders should have built in some protection. But that doesn't get the Ravens off the hook here. All right? I mean, that they still now look shady as hell. And one's got to wonder, maybe there's a reason they've never traded a first, because maybe nobody trusts them to trade a first. I mean, that's something to think about, right? So that's kind of interesting. Now, here comes the other thing that I heard, and I believe it was Albert Breer that said this. Might have been Albert Breer, might have been one of the other insiders. As of right now, like Maxx Crosby, a trade for him, you would only get 80 cents on the dollar in value because of the way this thing went down and the fact that his health was even being brought up. Because even though a lot of people think he's going to get healthy around the league, if he actually didn't, then you've got to stand in front of your owner and be like, oh shit, he didn't get healthy, and this whole thing was a bust. So that's the problem. I believe he also said that if a trade is going to go down for him, this was something I said the other day, in fact. And then Albert Breer said it after the fact, that if a trade's going to happen for him, it's probably going to be during the season now. You know, he gets off to a really badass start. He's whipping everybody's ass out there. He's got, 10 sacks in 5 games or something like that. And then his value is getting back up there. And then, the Raiders are 2-5 or whatever, and they're not going anywhere. The Bills come calling because they're 7-0 or some shit. The Niners come calling, they're 7-0. Cowboys maybe actually come back around. Let's say they get off to a 5-2 start, and then Maxx Crosby value returns, full value returns. I guess you could say. But wow. I mean, the other GMs just think it was total bullshit. The Ravens look horrible in this. Absolutely terrible. And again, is this going to cause them an issue with making deals with other general managers? That's something to watch. As look, Ravens fans are doing victory laps over this. Be careful what you wish for, because it sounds like the rest of the NFL is giving the one-ass eye to the Ravens over this shit right now. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.